All right, well, it is now 7. So everyone, welcome to the City of Eugene's first Shift to E-Bikes workshop. We're very excited to have you. My name is Logan Tellis. I'm a transportation planner with the City of Eugene, working on implementation of the city's electric vehicle strategy, which doesn't just include electric cars. It also has action items centered on educating, encouraging, and incentivizing people around the use of electric micromobility devices, such as electric bicycles. I'm joined today by my colleague, Karen Mason, who is also a transportation planner with the City of Eugene, working on implementation of the electric vehicle strategy. And the two of us are going to deliver the main presentation today. Afterwards, we're going to have a Q&A panel with representatives from 3 local bike shops. We have with us today Con and John, who are the owners of Electric Avenue. They've both worked in separate industries before realizing they were passionate about helping people connect with making electric transportation options. And they've operated in Eugene for about a year and are looking forward to many more years. We also have today Mike Murphy, who is the owner of Pedigo Electric Bikes Eugene. He self-describes as e-bike evangelist, retired banker, first-time entrepreneur. And he's passionate around helping non-traditional bikers find joy, freedom, and accessibility that e-bikes offer. And then last but not least, we have John Dodd. He's the part owner and the workshop/retail manager of Eugene Electric Bicycles. He's one of the founding members of Eugene Electric Bicycles and has been swimming in the world of e-bikes since he first discovered them. He says that his favorite part about e-bikes is how little power they use to get someone around. He remarks on how humans have gone through using a horse to get around to using a machine equivalent to hundreds of horses. And now we've got a 50-pound bicycle that uses half a horsepower and can do 80% of your travel. So John thinks that's pretty cool, and I do too. So now that you know a bit about who we all are, let's talk about the agenda for this presentation today. We're going to start out by covering some of the e-bike basics. We're going to talk about why they're great transportation options and what some of the technical terminology means that you're going to encounter when you're shopping for an electric bicycle. From there, we're going to get into the shopping considerations that might make one particular type of e-bike a better fit for your unique transportation needs. After that, we're going to discuss the legal considerations that go into e-bikes. We want to make sure you all know where you can operate e-bikes in Eugene and any other general legal rules that you need to follow while operating an electric bike. And then we're going to talk about safety considerations. There's a lot of overlap between traditional bike safety and electric bike safety, but there are a few unique considerations that you may not think of if you've never ridden an electric bike before. And then finally, we're going to have that Q&A panel session I mentioned with the 3 bike shops. So let's get into it. Let's get into the what and why of e-bikes. The first thing I want to stress is that e-bikes are a growing trend in the United States, and that I believe they're here to stay. E-bikes have been exceedingly popular in Europe and Asia for years and years and years. E-bikes currently account for approximately 17% of all new bike sales in the European Union, with some countries well exceeding that rate. In the Netherlands, for example, e-bikes account for approximately half of all new bike sales by some estimates, which is significant. And industry research groups even go on to say that they're projecting the EU will reach 17 million new e-bike sales per year by 2030, which is huge. And here in the US, our e-bike sales ratio is relatively low compared to that, but we're starting to really catch up. By some estimates, e-bike sales grew by 145% between 2019 and 2020 in the United States, which is significant. According to some estimates, US bike retailers sold 600,000 e-bikes in the US last year. Now, some of this has been partially attributable to the pandemic. Some people have been really impacted by reduced transit service, while others have been adjusting to their new financial situation. But I believe that beyond just COVID, there is a growing cultural awareness of how versatile e-bikes can really be. Regardless of whether you're riding a bike for commuting purposes, whether you're riding a bike to run errands, such as going to the grocery store or taking your child to school, or whether you're riding a bike for fun recreational exercise opportunity. Whatever your needs are, there's an e-bike that fits your needs likely. You can find great around town urban commuting bikes. You can find cruiser style bikes. You can find electric road bikes, cargo bikes that are electric. If traditional cargo bikes don't appeal to you, you can find electric Dutch style cargo bikes, foldable electric bicycles, fat tire electric bicycles, mountain bikes that are e-bikes, gravel bikes that are e-bikes, hybrid bikes that are e-bikes. And there's also a whole host of really great adaptive electric bike options. This is a great example of an electric trike, which obviously has the 3 wheels, and this model has the fun addition of the cargo bin in the back and the supportive backing on the seat. You can purchase electric recumbent bikes, which are a great option for people with certain mobility challenges or someone who's just looking for a different kind of ride from a traditional bicycle. And if you don't need a full recumbent, there are semi-recumbent bikes, which are great for people with certain mobility limitations and body types. So all of these you can find in electric options. And I want to take a moment to point out, while this presentation is about electric bikes, if you peruse the universe of electric bikes and can't seem to find an option that works for you or appeals to you, there are other types of electric micromobility devices that you might want to consider. These are just 3 options. We have the electric skateboard on the right, the e-scooter in the center, and that device there on the left is called a one-wheel. But this presentation will focus on e-bikes, and beyond the versatility of e-bikes, there are a lot of fantastic reasons why you might choose an e-bike. The thing that comes to mind for most people is when you're conserving that energy with the electric pedal assist, you're able to go further destinations faster. And that's something that really reduces the barriers to biking for a lot of people. Beyond that, e-bikes are obviously fantastic from a sustainability perspective. The City of Eugene's Climate Action Plan 2.0 found that 53% of our total GHG emissions come from the transportation sector. So if you replace some or maybe even all of your car trips with electric bike trips, you're really doing a great service to the environment, and you're really cutting down on your personal carbon footprint. And we also have the benefit here in Eugene of having really clean electricity. If you're an eWeb customer, you're benefiting from like a lot of hydroelectric energy sources. eWeb's electricity, approximately 90% of it comes from carbon-free sources. So, you're just adding that additional environmental benefit. E-bikes are sustainable everywhere, but you're getting extra clean transportation out of an e-bike in Eugene because of our clean electricity. And then beyond that, there's the great financial incentive of low cost of charging, particularly when you compare the cost of charging to the cost of fueling a vehicle. Here in Eugene, eWeb customers only pay 9.14 cents per kilowatt hour in energy and delivery charges. So depending on things like the model of e-bike you purchase and how high your electric assist is turned up, you're generally going to be spending less than 1 cent per mile in charging costs. And that's assuming that you're only charging your e-bike at your personal residence, which a lot of people are charging on the go and at their workplace. So that's a great financial incentive to keep in mind. Beyond that, e-bikes are great for multimodal trips. If you're a diehard transit commuter, keep in mind that LTD buses can accommodate electric bikes, same as they can any other bikes. And it's a really great, convenient option that makes your transit stops and your final destinations just that much easier to get to when you're using LTE. And then finally, I think we all know this, but cycling has a lot of great health benefits. Cycling is something that promotes heart health, it lowers stress levels, it can help people lose weight and more. And e-bikes are a really great low impact cardio workout. Something that's unique about electric bicycles is that you can adjust the level of pedal assist. So you're going to be able to determine what level of challenge is really right for your ability and your personal health. So that's something that's pretty unique in comparison to other exercise recreation options. So I think we're going to have a quick poll question here before we get into the technical details. So I'll give you all a moment to answer how familiar you are with e-bikes. Okay, let's give it another second or two. All right, so it sounds like a lot of you know a little bit about e-bikes, but perhaps not everything you need to know. And some of you don't know anything about e-bikes, and a few of you know a lot about e-bikes, which is great. So put this away. So let's get into some of the technical details. So let's start by talking about the two general types of motors that you're going to see on electric bikes as you're shopping for an e-bike. You're going to see hub motors a lot, which are located on the center of one of the bike's wheels. Can be on either the rear or the front wheel. And hub motors are a great affordable option. You're going to see them on a lot of entry-level and mid-level e-bikes. They're great because a lot of people will say that they have a bit less maintenance consideration that goes along with them because the motors are generally more encased within the casing itself. There's less movable parts on the exterior, and less movable parts is something that can cut down on the number of things that can go wrong. This isn't universally true, but this is something that gets referenced a lot. You can purchase geared or gearless hub motors, which are also known as direct drive motors. And gearless hub motors, you know, they offer even less in terms of moving parts. So there are a couple disadvantages that go with hub motors, though. They're generally a bit heavier than the alternative option, and they don't have the same ability for torque. So they often only accommodate a single gear ratio, which is something that you know, if you're traveling on relatively flat land most of the time, that's something that might not be an issue for you. But if you're someone who tends to take more topographically challenging routes, if you live at the top of a hill or you have a rough route to work, perhaps purchasing an e-bike with a mid-drive motor would work for you. The mid-drive motors, as you can see there on the right, they're more centered towards the middle of the bike's frame. And some say this creates a more balanced ride. That might be something that influences your decision. As I mentioned, they have the ability to generate more torque. So that's something that's a really big advantage for certain people. The one sort of negative to keep in mind with mid-drive motors is, one, as I mentioned, it comes with a bit more cost consideration than some hub drive motors come with. And then there's also the maintenance consideration. So mid-drive motors can be hard on chains. If you're getting a mid-drive motor, investing in a high-quality durable chain is something that can help reduce those maintenance concerns, as well as considering maybe looking for an e-bike model that has a belt drive, if that's something that's of a large concern to you. So those are both things to keep in mind. Now that we've talked about the two general categories of motor, let's talk about motor activation. So let's start by talking about pedal assist. Essentially, what pedal assist is you mount your bicycle and you kick off and you start pedaling, and the bike senses you're pedaling, and the motor automatically kicks in and starts assisting you with power. The other type of motor activation that you're going to see is throttles. Now, throttles sometimes have the twistable handle on e-bikes. Sometimes it'll have a thumb lever that activates the throttle. Oftentimes, e-bikes that you see on the market that have throttles also have an integrated pedal assist. So the throttle would provide you just extra juice on top of that integrated pedal assist that senses when you start pedaling. This is one of those subjects it's a personal preference kind of thing. Throttles can be great if you want to accelerate a bit faster than you might be able to otherwise do just by pedaling on your own. So for someone like me, the thought of riding in traffic and coming out of a dead stop at a red light or a stop sign or something like that, that's something that I I perceive to be an advantage of a throttle in sort of my personal transportation behavior. But both options cut down on the effort of pedaling, and that saves you energy to bike to further destinations. And that's a great thing. So now that we've covered that, let's talk about the two types of sensors you're going to see. So you're going to see cadence sensors, which adjust the level of motor output based on how fast you're pedaling your e-bike. So essentially, there is a small magnet on the crank, and there's a sensor on the fixed portion of the bike, and it can sense when the magnet pings that sensor. So it knows how fast you're pedaling, and the faster you pedal, the more motor output you're going to get, the more assist you're going to get. The other type of sensor you're going to see is a torque sensor. Now, torque sensors can actually sense how hard you're pressing on your pedals. This is one of those things where it's kind of a personal preference thing. Cadence sensors tend to be more affordable options. So you're going to see a lot of entry-level e-bikes with just the cadence sensor. You're going to see some mid-level and high-level e-bikes that have integrated cadence sensors and torque sensors. So there's that pairing of them. And then some e-bikes you're going to see just have the torque sensor on them. So it's one of those things that you just need to kind of test out and see if the feel is right for you. Some people have said that torque sensors feel a bit more natural to them. I think it's because some cyclists have that built muscle memory of, if I pedal harder, my bike will go faster. So that's something that you may want to test out and see if that's important to you. So now that we've talked about what some of the terminology means, let's talk about the three classes of e-bikes, because most of what you're going to find in the market falls into these three classes. Class 1 e-bikes are e-bikes that have pedal assist only, no throttle, and their motor has a maximum output of 20 miles per hour. Class 2 e-bikes are going to have that throttle, but their motor is going to also be capped at outputting 20 miles per hour. And then class 3 e-bikes, they're pedal assist, and they can go up to 28 miles per hour. But I want to point out that class 3 e-bikes technically exceed the state of Oregon's definition of what an e-bike is, and Karen's going to talk more about that later in the presentation. So now that we've covered all of that, let's talk a bit about range and capacity. Because something that I hear a lot talking to people who are considering purchasing electric bikes or electric cars in general, is that they're concerned about getting from point A to point B without running out of battery and without having access to a charging location if they do run out of battery. So there are a few things that can help mitigate this issue. But I want to start by saying that e-bike range can vary greatly depending on a lot of variables. The model of the e-bike and the type of battery you have are two pretty obvious ones. But I also want to stress that there are environmental factors that can affect the range of your e-bike. For example, if you're riding up a lot of hills, that's a pretty clear example of something that reduces range. The weight of any cargo you're carrying can reduce your range. The weight of the rider themselves can affect range. Even things like if you have low tire pressure, that's something that can affect range. So there's a lot of variables that go into this. So I would say take advertised ranges with a grain of salt. Something that you'll see across different kinds of e-bikes, different manufacturers, is you'll see e-bikes with very similar specs, sometimes advertised with very different ranges. And that's something that can be confusing for people who are shopping. So I would say if you're looking for an apples to apples comparison between e-bikes from different manufacturers, it's worthwhile actually taking a look at the watt hours themselves. The watt hours being a unit of electrical power. It's basically telling you how many watts your e-bike can deliver in an hour. And so if a particular manufacturer doesn't flat out give you the watt hours in the posting or on the tag, wherever you might see it, you can go ahead and multiply the volts by the amp hours, and that'll give you the watt hours. And that's a good way of getting that out, once again, getting that apples to apples comparison of e-bikes across different manufacturers, rather than looking at that advertised range, which can sometimes, different manufacturers have different levels of optimism about the environmental conditions you'll be operating the e-bike in. So watt hours are an important thing to look at. You're going to find lots of class 1 and class 2 e-bikes in a pretty wide range. Maybe 300 to 1,000 watt hours is something that you're going to be able to see when you're shopping. And obviously, less watt hours means less range than more watt hours. So that's a good way for you to compare and shop around for an e-bike that suits your needs on the range front. And then you also want to think about battery types. E-bikes are generally going to have lithium-ion batteries that can be charged by just a standard electrical outlet in your house. Now, I will say that there are some examples where you might run into older battery technology on an e-bike. You might occasionally come across an e-bike that has a lead acid battery, which is an older form of battery technology that's heavier and has a lower lifespan. Sometimes you'll find nickel-based batteries, which can be a bit less efficient than lithium-ion batteries. So it's just worthwhile making sure that the e-bike comes with a good lithium battery. Once again, e-bikes can be charged by standard electrical outlets. If you can't charge outdoors, you can detach the e-bike battery from the unit, bring it in with you, charge it indoors, whether that's in your home or if you know you're going to be spending a lot of time at your office, say, or a coffee shop or a library, something like that. So that's a convenient charging option for a lot of people. And then additional considerations on the battery front. Keep in mind that some manufacturers use a proprietary battery style. This is something that might make replacing your battery in the future a little bit harder because you can't shop around as much. And then also keep in mind that certain e-bike models come with regenerative braking capability, which essentially, if you're not familiar with what that means, as you're braking the e-bike, you're going to be regenerating your battery. It's like the braking process generates electricity that goes and feeds your battery. So that can be something that increases range, but it's not something that all e-bikes have. So if that's really important to you, you're going to have to go looking for that. And then finally, I want to talk about some general tips for prolonging the life of your battery. A really great tip is having both a high power charger and a low power charger. Some people, they purchase an e-bike and they go for the high power charger because they like the convenience of having the quicker charge. But for your day-to-day charging needs, if you have the luxury of leaving it plugged in for a little bit longer, lower power chargers are gonna be better for the long-term health of the battery itself, and it's gonna cut down, hopefully cut down on the need to replace it in how far out you're gonna need to replace it. So that's something to keep in mind. Also remember to charge your battery regularly. Letting batteries, not just e-bike batteries, but batteries in general, go all the way down to zero is something that's not good for them. So once you get down into like maybe the 65 to 30% capacity range, just make a habit of going ahead and plugging it in and not waiting till the last minute. But similarly, don't forget to unplug it, because overcharging your battery is also not good for the long-term health of the battery. If you get all the way up to 100, e-bike batteries will kind of generally zap themselves down to say 95, and then they'll go through this cycle of, tapping themselves off and bringing themselves back down. And these mini charging cycles aren't something that's good for the long-term health of the battery. So if you're prone to leave something plugged in and forget, maybe set a timer or something like that to just remind yourself to unplug it and not leave it plugged in for days and days. And then finally, avoid extreme temperatures if you can. Extreme cold conditions and extreme hot conditions are not good for operating or charging batteries in general. So if that's avoidable for you, that's something to keep in mind. And from there, we're going to get into some shopping considerations with Karen.
Thanks, Logan. So now that we have all of this base knowledge about all the components of the bikes, we're going to start discussing how those interplay as you start shopping for an e-bike. Next slide, Logan. When shopping for an e-bike, one of the most important things that you're going to have to take into consideration is what are your needs? That's really going to help determine what type of bike you're looking for. Questions that you need to ask are, do you need to climb hills? Will you be using the bike to run errands? What is your home storage situation? How fast and how far do you want to travel? How much physical effort do you want to put in? And will you be using the bike on paved dirt or gravel roads? Your body is also a major factor in determining what type of e-bike is going to be best for you. Your height, weight, and physical abilities are all super important variables to take into account. To provide some examples of how your needs and your body will interplay with your shopping considerations, we're going to circle back to some of those types of e-bikes that Logan showed you earlier. So if you plan to ride mostly around town for commuting purposes, you might want to consider either a city bike or a road bike. These are going to be more lightweight with thinner tires. As an e-bike, you might want to prioritize a smaller battery with less capacity to help keep the overall weight of the bike down. You might want something that is able to deliver a higher torque to help you get started from the dead stop at traffic, or if you need to ride in mixed traffic. A hub motor is also going to be something to consider. They work well on flat ground. But if you live in the South Hills, then you might want to think about a mid-drive motor that is going to help you climb those hills more efficiently. If you plan to use your bike to transport small children, pets, or heavy/numerous goods, then a cargo bike might be more of what you need. For these bikes, you want to consider something that has more torque to help you manage the additional weight. Keep in mind, though, that the more systems you use, the faster your battery will deplete, thus affecting your range. Next slide. All right, thank you. If you want a bike that can get you around town, but also hands itself on bike trails, then you might want a gravel or a hybrid bike. They have wider tires that can provide more grip on unpaved surfaces, although they're not suited for rough off-road trails. For those types of trails, you're going to want a mountain bike or perhaps a fat tire bike. These types of bikes, you're going to look for ones that are able to deliver higher torques to help you climb steep hills and have larger battery capacities for a longer range. The trade-off here, though, is that a larger battery capacity means that there's going to be more weight, and that will help. That may not matter much during the ride, but when you're loading that bike on and off of your car rack, there's going to be that extra weight. So you need to take that into consideration. And if you're someone who is taller or has some limited mobility, then you might want to consider a bike with a step-through frame, or perhaps a top bar that is angled lower instead of straight across. As with non-motorized bikes, as Logan mentioned earlier, there are a multitude of types of adaptive electric bikes for you to choose. So that might be this e-trike here or the e-recumbent bike. And you're also going to want to consider your physical living space. So if you live in a studio or a one-bedroom apartment, then storage space might be limited. In that case, you might want to think about a folding electric bike or perhaps some of the smaller forms of electric mobility devices to help get you around town. Your budget is going to be another really big consideration. E-bikes on the market start as low as a few $100s and can go up to anywhere from the $5,000 to $10,000 range. There's a lot of reasons for this, and that goes from the quality of the parts, where they're being manufactured and imported from, and a simple supply and demand issue. When you're thinking about the upfront cost, it's important to remember that you get what you pay for. It may cost more, but it's likely to last longer. Then again, just because it costs more doesn't mean it's better. It's important to do your research and talk with your local bike shop owners. You should also think about factoring in the cost of any types of upgrades you might want to make. If components are proprietary, meaning that they're only manufactured by the company that made the bike, or if they can be sourced more generically. You should also think about the warranty. If you know your bike maintenance, then maybe the warranty isn't as important to you. But if you're like me, and the only thing that I know how to do is pump air into my tires and put the chain back on when it falls off, then perhaps that's something that you need to think about. And then finally, budgetarily, you might want to consider the cost of maintenance. Again, the discussion of proprietary versus generic is important here. Proprietary could potentially mean more expensive and unavailable if the company should go out of business. Your local bike shop, again, is going to be your best ally here, which is why you need to think about your local retailer. When shopping for an e-bike, the quality of the components won't make much of a difference if your electric bike is not set up, tuned, and maintained correctly. If at all possible, buy local. If you have questions about your bike and possibly issues that require maintenance, you're going to want to be close by to where they are so that they can help you out. That includes all the shops here with us tonight. And we also want to give a shout out to Bike Friday. They're a local Eugene company that hand builds bikes and e-bikes. One last note about your budget. There are lots of great e-bike options for all budgets, including conversion kits. Instead of purchasing a whole new bike, conversion kits allow you to install a motor on your existing bike. Hub motor and mid-drive motor conversion kits can be purchased in stores or online. Once again, I'm going to beat that drum about talking to your local bike shop about your options on this. So with that, now that we have these shopping considerations behind us, we've discussed all the things that you should be thinking about, let's get into the legalities. What is an e-bike? According to Oregon Vehicle Code, it is a bike that has no more than 3 wheels. It has fully operational pedals, a seat, and a motor that has a maximum of 100 watts and is incapable of traveling more than 20 miles per hour on level ground. Using that definition, we can say that an e-bike is not a motor-assisted scooter. Those have a speed limit of 15 miles per hour on the streets, but they can be manufactured to go as high as 24 miles per hour. They are not a moped. A moped is both manufactured and street able to reach 30 miles per hour. And it is not a motorcycle. A motorcycle can potentially reach over 100 miles per hour, but it needs to observe the posted speed limit. So with that, we have one more question for you. And that is, well, actually, that was a bit of a trick question. I kind of tricked you all there. I'm sorry about that. Because it is a bike. But, so according to, it is both, basically. To get to the short of it, it is both. The code says that an electric assisted bicycle shall be considered a bicycle, but it also states that a bike is considered a vehicle. A bicycle is a vehicle for the purposes of the vehicle code, and every person riding a bicycle on the public way is subject to the same provisions as any other vehicle. So sorry about that. Now we're going to get into some of the more legal basics. So you have to be 16 years old to ride an e-bike, and a helmet is not required, but we do highly recommend it. And you do not need to secure a license, registration, or insurance. I do want to clarify that kids under 16 are required to wear helmets on their pedal bikes, even though they shouldn't be riding e-bikes. And we also want to recommend that you register your bike as a precaution in case of theft. Because bikes are valuable, portable, and easy to resell, they're easy targets for thieves. There are several bike registries. If you can go back one, please, Logan, thank you. There are a couple of different bike registries that are available, such as bikeindex.org or project59.com, which are free, convenient, and easy to use. There were 784 bicycles that were reported stolen in Eugene last year, but 121 of them were able to be recovered. So now we're going to go to the speed limit. If you remember, the vehicle code stated that the motor on the bike should be incapable of traveling more than 20 miles per hour with the motor alone on level ground. So that suggests that your bike can go as fast as you can make it go, as long as the motor is not the only thing propelling it. So that means that in the end, you're probably not going to actually go much more than 20 unless you're going downhill and have the assistance of gravity to help you out there. So it's this speed limit which allows e-bikes to be classified as bikes and operate in the same spaces, which include in the road using the entire lane, as long as you are able to maintain the speed of traffic, which is something that's going to be a lot easier to do when you're operating an e-bike as opposed to a standard pedal bike. If you are going to be traveling slower than the speed of traffic, then you need to stay as far to the right as is practicable. You can also operate in a bike lane or a bike path. And something to note here is that in Oregon, we do have a mandatory side path law. That means that people on bikes are required to use the bike lane if one is present or near the roadway. They are also able to be used on our shared use paths, which includes the Riverbank Path, the Fern Ridge Trail, and the Amazon Trail. This is effective as of last year. And but it does that. Basically, it does not include the East Alton Bacon Park area, also known as the Willamette Natural Area. So don't ride your e-bike there. You can ride it if the motor is off, but don't ride it while the motor is on. The major difference between where an e-bike and a bike can operate is that e-bikes are not allowed to ride on sidewalks. So please don't do that. Do want to let you all know that you can ride your regular bike on the sidewalks, except for within our downtown no riding zone. We would like to state that this is a staged photo provided to us by our partners at Electric Avenue and not an actual sidewalk rider. And now we'll transition to some safety considerations. While you're riding, we mentioned that you are not required to wear a helmet, but we highly recommend it. It's for your safety, protect that noggin. Be seen, use a front white light and a rear red light. Legally, you should be using a front white light anyways, but the law basically requires a rear red reflector, but we do highly recommend the rear red light to help you be visible. Be heard. Use a bell to signal yourself to people walking, and maybe you might want to consider going the extra mile and getting like a horn so that people driving can hear you a little bit better. Look behind you when you are taking the lane or you have to move into the travel lane because for whatever reason, construction is redirecting you. There's a truck offloading cargo blocking the lane and you need to go into traffic. Look over your shoulder, make sure that there isn't a car behind you. It's especially important these days as cars are getting quieter as they become more electrified. And a great backup secondary assist is having a mirror to help you see behind you. Make sure that your tires are inflated. Not only will this help improve your range on your battery, but it will also help you more quickly maneuver out of the way of a potential disastrous incident. And it is really important to maintain your bike. Annual tune-ups and routine maintenance are going to help keep your bike running smoothly. This is going to be even more important on an electric bike where you have all those electrical components going on. You don't want something to go wrong while you're in the middle of a busy intersection or cruising downhill. This is going to be another great opportunity for me to stress for you the importance on relying on the skills and knowledge of your local bike shops. Be cautious, pay attention, So this is basically people driving and people walking are not used to people biking, traveling at such high speeds. This disconnect can lead to a potentially disastrous situation. So please don't only think about what you're doing on the bike, but how people on the road perceive you. And that means that you should ride defensively. Assume that people driving are out to get you. They're most likely not. But that disconnect for that, they're just not expecting you to be traveling so quickly. So that might mean that they think that they have the time to make a turn in front of you and not expecting you to get to that intersection so quickly. So that could be another bad situation. So pay attention, ride defensively, and regulate your speed. Take time to learn how your bike feels at lower speeds before cranking it all the way to 11. You should brake earlier. Again, because you have that extra speed, that means that you got to start hitting those brakes earlier than you would normally on your pedal bike before approaching stop signs, road crossings, and intersections. And be careful getting on and off your bike. If it tips over while you're trying to get on and off, it's going to be heavier, and that extra weight can come down on you, causing an injury, and we don't want that. Ride smart. Ride with the flow of traffic. This will help you prevent getting hit by a car because the driver didn't see you. They were looking this way and didn't expect you to be coming this way, and then all of a sudden it's bad news bears. Ride with the flow of traffic. Obey signs and signals. We do want to note here that as of January 1st last year, 2020, it is legal for people on bikes to Oregon to treat stop signs as yield signs. And make eye contact, especially at intersections, with people walking, with people driving. This will help you navigate your way through, make sure that everybody is aware and sees each other and kind of have an understanding. Also, we be courteous while you're riding your bike and your e-bike. People walking always have the right of way. So that means wheels yield to heels, and that you should be riding your bike to the right and then passing on the left. And when you do pass, give a little warning. That could either be a on your left, or it could be the ding ding of your bell, or perhaps that air horn. And don't block the bike path, don't block the traffic lane, don't block the shared use path. If you're going to stop, move to the side. And use safe speeds while you're riding. Again, this is going to be especially important on our shared use paths where there are small children that just don't have situational awareness, or dogs that are potentially running around, people walking with their headphones on and they just don't hear you saying that you're passing. They don't hear your bell. So that also then feeds into the look and listen, just being aware of your surroundings, and that you should use your lights at night. This is not just for your safety, but for the safety of the others on the road with you. So that, if it's at night and somebody is walking, trying to cross the street and you don't have a light on, they may not see you, and then you both get into a collision, and we don't want that. So use your lights. We would like to also let you know about some additional events going on. There will be a bike basics class if you are interested in learning more about how to safely ride your bike. It's going to be held by the Greater Eugene Area Riders, GEARS for short, and it's going to be online at Tuesday, May 11th at 12. They're going to talk about how to fit your bike properly, more of the basic rules of the road, and other tips and tricks for enjoying your ride. You can find more information about that on the City of Eugene Transportation Facebook page. And also, as soon as it's safe to hold larger in-person events again, We are planning to host an e-bike expo featuring a wide array of e-bikes from local shops and makers, including all 3 shops present here today. It's going to be a one-stop shop for a wide variety of e-bikes of all kinds. And we'll send you a notice once it's been scheduled and we know what's going on with that. Unfortunately, as we all know, Lane County will be moving into the high-risk category tomorrow. So just that's something to keep into consideration. And with that, we are going to open it up for the questions. Thank you all for listening to us ramble on about bikes and e-bikes for the past 45 minutes. And now it's time for your questions to be answered by our very knowledgeable bike experts. So let's see. I know that some questions were asked at the beginning, so I'll circle around to that.
Yeah, and I see some people raising their hand. If you want to drop your question in the chat box, that's something that Karen and I are going to be reading the questions off of for the participants from the e-bike shops.
Are speed limits being considered for the paths? That is a very great question. I know that it is something that is being discussed, but there is no answer there yet.
I see here. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Nope. So let's see. Are there any special considerations for riding in the rain?
Yeah, I was gonna go off that question, and you can ride pretty much most e-bikes in the rain. Some of the manufacturers recommend if it's a hardcore downpour, maybe trying to get out of the rain, but most e-bikes can be ridden year-round.
Do e-bikes get stolen more often, and any considerations for protecting my investment?
Locking up a regular bike is the same as locking up an electric bike. If you make it look like a pain in the butt to steal, they're probably not going to steal it. Don't hide your bike away. Put it out front, lock it well, get a lock that has an insurance policy, and that's 99% of the stress.
Yeah.
Is insurance available for e-bikes?
Yep.
Most of it refers back to renters or homeowners insurance, but most policies can talk to you about it. It's a relatively new segment for insurance, but if you talk to your agent, they'll probably have a good answer for you, better than ours. So.
Yeah, there's a company that I looked into called Bikmo, B-I-K-M-O, and they were a company that specialized in insuring electric bikes for theft and damage and that kind of stuff.
And at Pedigo, we actually offer, as part of our 5-year warranty, if you purchase a lock from us and use the lock as instructed, and the bike gets stolen, you'd file a police report, take pictures, provide any remnants of the lock, and then we would file for a one-time bike replacement as part of your purchase of a Pedigo bike.
Does a more powerful motor mean more range or more battery consumption?
More battery consumption. Just you got a bigger throttle, you're more likely to use more power. So you can get the same range with a 750 watt motor that you could with a 250 watt motor if you're on minimum assist on that bigger motor the whole time. But most likely you get a big motor, vroom vroom, much less range.
Yeah, and that is also relative to like the way you ride and the conditions you ride in, you know, like hills or he was mentioning if you want to use the throttle more than pedal. So the range can be relative to how you ride.
Although it does seem to be a relationship between people who choose to buy larger motors and how they ride. And very often you don't usually get a larger battery or motor to go slower generally. And so therefore you're probably going to consume more than you're going to get range, generally speaking, but not always. As you said, the answer always is depends. It's probably more likely someone's going to get a larger motor and try to go faster, and that'll consume more battery.
Or the way of the rider as well. I mean, everybody has like their different needs and whatever they're looking for.
Exactly.
I'm amazed by how many very wide tired bikes I see on the paths with little apparent pedaling going on. What percentage of the bikes sold are this type and why?
Fat tire-
Percentage would be hard.
Yeah, fat tire bikes are very popular for sure.
Yeah. The
Uh,
wide, the easy, you just get a heck of a lot of traction.
You do. And the motor, some objections I've run into with people asking questions about the fat tire bikes is like, do they add more drag? Do they slow you down? And I think there might be a little bit of that, but when you have the motor and you're using the assist, it's totally irrelevant. And the fatter tires do give you, more stability and definitely absorb more bumps and ruts and cracks and things like that on the pavement.
Yeah, it's like having some built-in suspension in a way. If you don't have suspension forks, things like that, it does soften the ride in some ways. And I think for some people, there is, whether it's real or not, there's a perception, as Hawk said, about stability on the bike. That it feels like you're not going to tip over as much.
So yeah, the center of balance is a little bit lower, and also with fat tires, you don't pump them up all the way, so they actually are made to be ridden pretty like loosely. So you kind of just bounce around and float around. So
Yeah.
And they're all terrain. You can take them to many different types of riding, and then you can use them in lots of other environments: beach, dirt, gravel, mud.
Yep.
You know,
Fat tires are a different animal. They handle differently. You pull out of turns a lot differently. There's a lot of considerations to be made with tire choice, and it's probably not even part of this conversation, but tires are what connect you to the earth. And generally your fat tires are going to be more expensive, and they're going to grip the road a bit better, and they're going to wear a little quicker as a result. So positives and negatives for sure.
and they do, there is slicks and treaded fat tires. So, if you want the stability of a fat tire, but you want the sort of the smooth ride of a smooth tire, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to consider also is that because the pressure in the tire is generally less, oftentimes they can be more susceptible to getting punctures, and there's really nothing more painful than having to push a big old heavy bike with a flat tire. So people have to trade that off for how they're going to use it and what terrains they want to be in, but that is something people have to consider.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about federal rebates or tax credits for e-bikes?
We hope they're coming. There's a bill going through the House of Representatives right now. I don't believe it's been voted on yet, but
So yes.
vote yes. Yeah, the way the Senate and the House are stacked right now, most likely it's going to go through, but that's just wishful thinking. So
And what will happen is if it does go through, basically when you buy an e-bike, you can apply for a credit because of the sustainability that it applies.
and I think it's going to be bikes over 1,500 and up to $500 or something.
Well, actually, I think it's going to be up to the bike
30% of the cost.
Up to 8,000, and I think it's tapped at 1,500 or 30%. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the proposal right now. It has not been passed.
But would be nice.
Yes.
And I will say there was a question if previous questions will be answered, and to that person, I would recommend re-putting it in the chat, please.
Yeah, you see the next question about if you run out of juice, and that's also something to be to consider. But in my experience, most bikes, not all of them, but most of them will pedal pretty easily on their own without the motor turned on.
Yep. And just like a regular bike, the nicer the e-bike is, the easier it is going to be to pedal.
Right.
And something that I've also sort of learned is that some bike designs and styles and like sort of the geometry will also sort of dictate like, how easy it is to pedal and how much the manufacturer put into wanting it to be pedaled. But some of them are just twist and go, and that's kind of why they're built, and they're different style of riding.
Do batteries get stolen off of e-bikes?
I have not heard of a single case in the 6 years we've been here. Most likely, if you're losing your battery, you've lost your bike.
Yeah, I would say the same. Most of I don't know if all designs, but many designs that I'm familiar with, the battery locks into the frame in some fashion and is generally not usable outside the bike that you're taking. But we rarely see just the battery stolen. We typically would see the entire bike stolen.
And if the battery is a quick remove, where it's just kind of a turn of a key and it slides right off, that could be another sort of factor to help protect your investment. If the battery is not with the bike and it's locked up, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I would imagine a thief might not want it if it's an e-bike with no battery.
It's part of the pain in the butt thing. Now they got to steal your bike and buy a battery.
Yep. Yep. Thieves don't like to buy stuff. One thing we know.
Mm-hmm.
Is it legal for e-bikes to have throttles on the bike paths?
I don't know about this one.
As far as I've seen, it isn't. We have certain manufacturers who are European based who have added throttles to their American distribution, just because the American market is a little bit different. We're a little bit more spread out. We like to have a little bit of more like freedom to go. So I think the trend is going to be it's going to be a little bit more speed limit based. You can't really tell if a bike has a throttle or not, but you can definitely tell if a bike's going over 20 miles an hour. I don't know about you guys.
I'm gonna just say straight yes. You're allowed to have your throttle on. Definitely watch your speed.
Yeah.
It's part of the legal pedelec definition. Motor can propel you, but definitely on the bike path, I say 16 miles an hour under, especially if it's busy.
Yeah.
I mean, part of having an electric bicycle is it shouldn't matter if you have to slow down because zoom,
Right.
Right. And by definition, I mean, under class 2 definition, the bike goes the same speed whether you're doing pedal assist or can do the same speed pedal assist or throttle. There's no throttle doesn't make the bike go faster than if you're pedaling in a high pedal assist. So that it's really more of a really to what John said, it is legal. And what all of us, I think, are trying to say is that we all are very much pro speed consciousness.
Yeah.
We know that it only takes a couple poor decisions to affect the entire industry. And so we're all very cautious about folks that are
Be respectful of your surroundings and the people, and definitely respect the bike, because having an electric bike does give you a new way to travel. And so you also have to adapt and evolve and help it evolve correctly and not try and disrespect the whole genre.
Is there a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit for e-bikes on the bike path? If not, why not?
No, and don't know how to answer the second part.
I'll just jump in here real quick. I put an answer in there. This is Shane with the City of Eugene, the Transportation Options Coordinator. And I'm working on a path etiquette campaign project that we're piloting this summer that'll touch on a lot of different issues. And a couple things that we are looking at are centerline striping in certain areas, as well as the potential of piloting some speed limits in some areas. And also, just real quick, since we have a moment between questions, can we just do a quick round of the folks who are on to introduce themselves, because we haven't had a chance for people listening in to know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Hakan. This is my brother John. We opened Electric Avenue Sports downtown in August of 2020, so right in the middle of the pandemic. And we had the rare opportunity to open this shop because of the pandemic. We both found ourselves jobless, and we grew up here. We've ridden these streets with our parents since we were little kids. So it's a fantastic blessing and humbling experience to be downtown Eugene and to be able to offer unique products and improve people's lifestyles in our own city, in our own hometown.
I'm John. I run Eugene Electric Bikes. I'm one of the founding members since we popped in 2015. Started below the 5th and High Street bridge, basically. Now we're over on River Road, and just keeping people rolling. So.
And I'm Mike Murphy with Pedigo Electric Bikes. I'm an authorized dealer for Pedigo. Started my business in November after trying to retire in July and realized I couldn't travel as I planned. So they kind of fell into this without really a whole lot of forethought. Prior to that, I'd been an electric bike user for about 5 years. I'd lost about 135 pounds commuting to work. And so
Nice.
I no longer own a car, and I'm a big fan of e-bikes regardless of brand. I think that they help a lot of people who are not traditional cyclists get their freedom and accessibility and health back. And so that's really my passion at this point.
Thank you all. Yeah. And then for the following question, we have, what are the embodied carbon emissions compared to a vehicle?
So there is some data out there. People for Bikes is one area, one source of it. Another one's the European Cycling Federation, and you can look these up. But the information I have as far as like carbon footprint, and these are again information from European Cycling Federation, where of course they have a lot higher adoption of cycling than we do here in our country. But roughly 21 to 22 grams of CO2 per kilometer traveled for an e-bike. That compares to, of course, a traditional bike that's around less than a gram, but compared to, say, public transportation, that's 101 kilograms, and then passenger cars that are 271. So that's out of their report from 2020.
10 to 25 times better than driving. Like it. For me, it's about how much material we're taking out of the earth to make our transport. For a car, you got 3,000 to 5,000 pounds, does a whole lot more than an e-bike. But for an e-bike, you got 30, 40 pounds of metal and 10 pounds of electronics and a lithium battery, which, lithium batteries have their own concerns for manufacturing, which is something that internationally we're, hopefully dealing with. But yeah, it's 50 pounds of material instead of 3,000 or 4,000.
Right. And I'll try to find the article and get this on to Karen or Logan for those who are interested in this European Cycling Federation statistics. They did talk about some of the indirect contributions, just like John's referring to, as far as greenhouse gases, the friendliness of materials, all those kinds of things, recyclability. And so it would be a long conversation to get into all the details, but there is, it looks like there's some pretty reliable information available, not just in the US, but internationally.
I will read this comment question. Is the East Alton Baker bike path part of our main bike path commuter route from Springfield to Eugene? If so, this is unusable by e-bike riders with their motors on. Yes, that is how it is at this point in time.
But to be fair, there's a nice new bike lane going on Main Street into Springfield, so you can cross the bridge right where you're not supposed to use your motor and take the bike path all the way into Springfield.
Right.
You're talking about the through Glenwood now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll also note that I did leave something in the comments about the Willamette Natural Area, so you can kind of understand where that is in East Alton Baker, and then just some other information.
And does it mean why they're not allowed there?
Well,
So there's a park master plan that limits motorized vehicles, and the committee that oversees that has defined that as e-bikes as well. And so there was an effort, some encouragement from the Active Transportation Committee and some citizens to change that, and that just hasn't happened. And so, as I mentioned in the comments, that if people want more information or to find out why, we recommend they talk to their elected officials.
What does charge cycle mean for a battery? I have converted my commuter bike with a front hub motor, and the battery has a 1,000 charge cycle.
So generally, most e-bikes and electric micromobilities are using lithium-ion batteries. The battery in question from the looks like Gen Something that has 1,000 charge cycles is most likely going to be a lithium polymer battery. So this rule doesn't quite apply. It discharges a bit differently. But lithium ion batteries are generally rated for 500 cycles. What that means is you can fully charge them and fully discharge them. And after about 500 of these cycles up and down, you'll see about a 20% degradation of the battery. So it will charge a little bit slower. It'll output a little less. It'll hold a little less. And then you're at that 80% mark. By the time you've done another 400 or 500 cycles, you drop down to about half of what the battery was capable of. And then you start to see a nosedive and eventually it stops working. So that's what a cycle is. And if you only discharge your battery down to like 50%, then charge it up to 80 and then 50, 80, those are not complete charge cycles. So it's really like 10 to 90, that whole swoop all the way up and down is one charge cycle. But if you're just topping it off, your battery is going to last quite a long time. Sorry, I have long answers for batteries, fair warning.
Well, I think something to add to that is also that when you invest in an electric bike, something to expect is that at some point in time, you will replace a battery, and it's completely part of owning an e-bike, and it's a normal process, and it shouldn't be something that should deter you from getting an electric bike.
Yeah, and it's definitely a factor of how you're using your bike and what kind of bike you get. So generally, like the more expensive mid-drive motors, their batteries will last 5 to 7 years, maybe longer. Most of the commuter bikes with like a 500-watt motor, you're going to see like a 3 to 5 year battery life. And if you're going for like a 750, 1,000-watt, those like recreational e-bikes, you are going to see like a 1 to 2 year battery life because those just eat through them pretty quickly.
And I do see a comment here that is reminding me to remind everybody here in attendance, circling back to the question about credits and rebates, everybody in attendance here is eligible for a discount at our participating shops. So that is $50 off of any bike that is e-bike that costs less than $2,000 and $150 off any e-bike that costs more than $2,000. So the next question, I think we've answered that already. Which trails are bikes forbidden on again? That was the trails contained within the Willamette Natural Area. Legal question. On the bike versus vehicle discussion, the so-called Idaho stop law allows bikes to yield rather than stop. Can you confirm this also applies to e-bikes? They are also not required to stop, but yield. Okay.
Yep. Legally, pedelec vehicles are considered bicycles. That's federal and state law. So.
Are e-bike laws primarily dictated at local levels? I'm just curious, if I travel with an e-bike, will I be able to use it freely on trails, etc., elsewhere, like Bend, around Oregon, etc.?
If you're going to be traveling to do trails, especially like national parks, BLM land, things like that, contact your trail managers ahead of time, because especially in national parks right now, it's really up to the trail manager. Kind of gray zones there, but anywhere that's like bike paths, federally you're covered. State laws can differ a little bit, but they all fall under the same federal guidance. And then if there's local municipalities, most of them will have signs that'll say no electric bicycles. Signs that say no electric vehicles are not the same.
And in Bend particularly, I have heard that there are some of those trails that you definitely would want to talk to a trail manager or just make sure you're looking at the signs, especially in the mountain bike areas.
Yep. But if you're clear that you're using a pedal assist electric bicycle, especially if it's a lower power one, a lot of trail managers are very forgiving on that. There's really good resources. I'll hop back in just a second when I find the link. But there's actually a map on, I think it's peopleforbikes.org, that shows where you can use your e-bike on trails nationwide.
That's cool.
Yeah. And tagging onto the yield question, this is correct. The Idaho stop and its full discretion as it was originated in Idaho applies to both stop lights and stop signs. The Oregon legislation that was passed last year only applies to stop signs, not stop lights.
Just a clarification really quick that it is stop signs and flashing red lights. So if there's a flashing red light, then that's like, which is like a stop sign, but it is a flashing red light. But on a regular signal, correct, you don't, it's not like the Idaho stop, in which you can actually stop at the stoplight and then proceed. That is not the same in the Oregon law.
And then Karen, I did link you the, I don't know if you can put it out to the chat, but the link for your e-mountain bike map nationwide.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Next question, do e-bikes have speedometers?
99% of them, yeah. There's going to be some really cheap basic bikes that don't have any panels on them, but most of them are going to have your speed, your pedal assist level, which is how much power the bike's going to give you when you're pedaling, and then things like distance traveled, battery level, sometimes various other odometer things. So.
Yep.
Oh gosh, sorry about that, everybody. That was not what I meant to share. It was just the link to the Zoom call that we are all currently on. I will try to reshare that link to the people from Bikes link again in a moment, but trying to find the next question now.
How long do the coupons last? I assume that as long as you attended the event, you're all on it for as long as you want. Is there
Everything within reason.
Yeah.
But if you want an electric bike, you better come now.
Yeah, right.
We have about 40 or 50 on stock, but they're going fast, folks.
Yeah, that is very true.
Are the larger organized rides like Cycle Oregon okay with e-bikes, assuming rides resume after COVID?
I would hope so. A lot of them are. There's going to be some friction in some rides, especially if there's any competition going on in the ride. But for the most part, most of those rides are just about getting out with people that want to ride their bike, and that's what e-bikes are for.
Yeah, we host every Saturday night at our shop here. We host like just a simple kind of community night ride. So at 6, we close the store. We invite anyone to come down with their bikes or scooters or one wheels or boards. And we leave at about 7 and go just do a nice little roundabout every Saturday. It's a good time.
That sounds nice.
Oh, what it is nice.
I miss way too much riding time and sunlight running this shop, I gotta say.
Exactly.
Jealous of every customer that comes in to ride a bike.
You watch them ride out and you just say, yep, good on you.
In the morning, it was 32 degrees, but I still got out, but it's hard.
Yeah. E-trikes.
I have shared that link that John provided about the bike trail map. Does anyone local have e-trikes?
I think Pedigo does, right, Mike?
Well, I can't get any, but yeah, we make them. But yeah, we're at a situation where I do not currently have any in stock. I don't think I'll see them until the second half of the year, but we do make them and they're very popular.
I've got a company that makes a bike with like a sidecar option, and the sidecar makes it a trike essentially. It's going to be balanced, but again, it won't be in stock until midsummer.
I know the same answer.
Yeah, there are some kits that people can find that actually would add like large training wheels on both sides. If balance is an issue, there are some ways around. There's some creative ways around it. You'd want to work with a qualified mechanic to make those kind of adjustments.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if you're looking for a trike, you really want to, really should try to find a trike.
Yeah, we special order entry-level trikes and recumbents, but generally if you're looking for a new electric recumbent, I refer all my customers up to Recumbent PDX up in Portland. Great people, they do a lot of great fitting, they can answer a lot of questions, but if you're looking for a cheaper option, most recumbents or trikes that you can find out there, we actually do conversions in-house as well. Upright trikes are quite a bit harder to have conversions you'll be happy with, but recumbents especially. We've been doing conversions on those since we opened up our doors. So
That's good to know. I've had people asking about recumbents, and now I know that I can send them over to you, John.
yeah, but if they're looking for a new one, especially like a higher budget, PDX recumbent's the way to go. They have some nice stuff.
Yeah,
So.
no, I'll definitely use that for sure.
Are there e-bikes with longer range that might be more useful on long cross-country rides? If not, have you heard anything about some longer range batteries?
Most batteries are going to perform the same depending on what motor you put on them. But if you're looking for longer range, look for mid drives from Bosch, Bros, Shimano, and Yamaha.
Yeah, I've had a handful of customers that essentially the bike has a easy to take off battery, and they'll just sort of stack the batteries. And when they want to go do long rides, unfortunately they have a backpack or a rack with a few extra batteries on it, but they can just plug and play and go that distance they want to go.
Yeah, some of the Bros systems come with a 750 watt hour battery, and you can get realistically, they claim 150, but realistically like 110, 120 on one charge. So those are generally going to come on more expensive systems, but stacking batteries, like Hakan said, is the budget option for sure. Especially if you've got a trailer for all your stuff and you only get to stop once every day or two.
If you are physically disabled, are e-trikes ever considered a mobility aid?
I don't know.
I know some people that use them as such, but I know that mobility aids in general have a lot more consideration into safety, specifically how durable all of like the wheels and the electronics are. They operate a lot slower for good reason. So if someone is going to use an electric bike for a mobility aid, do be cautious to use higher quality materials or keep a closer eye on maintenance. Because I hate to see people get stranded, and even more so, people with mobility issues get stranded. So.
I think we touched upon this briefly, but if we want to touch on it again, I have a recumbent trike and I wonder if it can be electrified and who would do it.
We're always happy to take a look. If you email me a couple pictures of the trike, I can give you a quick answer in a minute or two on whether or not I can do it. Just contact at eugeneelectricbicycles.com. Conversions do have a cost though. Most of our conversions price out at between $1,550 and $1,600. That's parts, labor, in-house warranty included.
Has Shimano built a slow charger for the E-series batteries or just the charge brick?
Anything built by Shimano, Bosch, or Bros for their battery systems, don't worry about it. They do all of the battery management internally. There's a reason that they last 5 to 7 years, and most of the other ones are like 3 to 5.
Bosch, Yamaha, and what other brands for batteries did you list?
Brose was the last one. That's Brose. They're another German company like Bosch, a little less known.
And I think that brings us to the end of the list, and we are actually 3 minutes over. So, we have one more.
Oh.
What are your thoughts about hub motors to electrify a regular bike versus mid-drive kits?
The special thing about a mid-drive motor is that the motor drives the chain, so that when you change gears for the bicycle, you're changing them for the motor as well. So it allows you to take advantage of the bike's gear ratio. So if you're on a lot of really nasty hills, a mid-drive is always going to be king. But if you're just looking to get around, you're on mostly flat ground, an equivalent motor as a hub motor is going to accelerate faster because you don't have to click through all your gears to get up to speed every time. Hub motors are generally going to be a little bit cheaper. But honestly, with a conversion, if you can get a mid-drive in there, do it.
Yeah.
So we've been using the same mid-drive conversion kit since day one. We haven't changed it once. The Bafang BBSO2, big chunky motor. It'll do the trick.
And there is a call out here that the Eugene Adaptive Rec at Hilliard Center has an electric recumbent trike that is available for rental if you want to try it out for longer stretches before buying, or if you don't have the funds to purchase at this time. We have lots of other adaptive bikes too. After an initial assessment, which costs $5, bikes can be rented by the half hour, half day, day, and weekend rates are available. Also, May has free rentals for May's Bike Month.
Right on.
And if y'all are willing to answer one more.
Yeah, I don't mind. Quick reference for power. Sorry if I'm taking over, guys. But I weigh about 220, and a 350 watt hub motor, 350 will get me up Skinner's Butte as long as I'm keeping my legs moving. A 250 will get me up to like 16 on flat ground, and I'm huffing and puffing to get up Skinner's. So
Flat ground.
yeah, mostly flat ground. It'll cancel out the weight of the bike, but you're still going to feel the hills.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live on top of Chambers, and definitely I wouldn't even try it with a 250.
Maybe a Bosch 250, but
I mean, if I have my weight in the morning,
Definitely go for sure.
yeah, application of power sometimes is just as important as how much power you're throwing at it. That's why if you're looking for an e-bike, try everything.
yeah,
See what's out there.
that's key. I
Yep.
can't say that enough. If you have the ability and you're willing, go to your shops, try them all. You'd be amazed at what you might find fits exactly what you need.
Concur 100%.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
So I'm not seeing any more questions here. I think it's time to wrap up. Many
Cool.
thanks to everybody on our panel answering all these questions. Many thanks to everybody who came here tonight, participated. We appreciate you all. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Appreciate
On
it.
a last note, if anybody has any other questions as you progress in your thoughts of e-bikes, don't hesitate to reach out to us shop owners. We love to give out as much information as we have, and don't hesitate to ask questions. It never hurts.
We're passionate about it. We want to help you.
We are definitely passionate about it.
All right. Well, thanks for the invite. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.